this recorded so that we can, if people have to leave for whatever reason, it'll stay on Facebook, but also it'll be on our YouTube channel. So Connor, you can go out and like share it or do whatever you want to do with the conversation
Okay, cool.
later. But we were just quickly talking about the title of Connor's book that we're going to be talking about in a few minutes, Sleeping Bear. When you go to search it, kids' books come up. This is not anything close to a kid's book. So spoiler alert on that. So hi, Connor. Hi, Matt. How are you both?
Good. How are you?
Good. Doing good. We're
Great.
excited about tonight's event. I can't wait. I'm going to fill a minute or two just letting Facebook know that we are live and that we are that we're here. So real quickly, because I'm not sure where people will be joining us from. Matt, you and I are in San Diego, but Connor, you're up in Montana.
Yep.
And I think you have fans that might be from all over the place. So we are located in La Jolla, little pocket north of San Diego. My little sign there says since 1896. We're celebrating our 125th anniversary this year.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So we've been around the block a few times and hosted, I can't even count how many events we've hosted over the years, pivoted to the virtual world. So I'm so excited. We were talking in the green room. Matt was actually our very first virtual event back on March 30th of 2020. And we have all learned a lot and gotten a lot better at this since those days. And then Connor, you helped us with the Chris Howdy event back in January. We've been excited about hosting you for a very long time. So just real quick about tonight, Connor and Matt are going to talk for about 30, 40 minutes, something like that. I'm going to put into the Facebook chat. If you're joining us on YouTube later, sorry, this isn't live anymore. But on Facebook right now, there's a way for you to participate. If you have a question for Connor, go ahead and pop that into the comment section of Facebook. I'm going to feed those into Matt during the conversation. We'll get to as many of them as we can. I'll pop on a little bit later if we have some stragglers that we need to get to. And I'm also going to put Connor's book into the comment section. Easily click on that. Matt, I put your latest book in there as well. I know people are tired of hearing me saying this, but any way that there is to get a book, you can get it from Warwick. So we ship. If you're in the San Diego area, you can stop by and see us. So, and I was talking Connor about, how long it's been since we've talked about this book. And you're with one of my favorite people in the world. I'm not sure if David's watching this, but David gets to work with some of the best people. You, Brad Thor, Jack Carr, Chris Haughty, all these great people. So it's so great to have you. And thank you, David, for having wonderful authors and letting us host them. So with that, let me introduce both of you and we'll get the show on the road. So Connor Sullivan attended the University of Southern California, where he was the recipient of the Edward W. Moses Award for Creative Writing. During college, he worked for Warner Brothers reading screenplays before relocating with his family to, how do you say it, Gallatin Valley? Gallatin Valley in Montana. Like I said earlier, he's here to talk to us tonight about his debut, Sleeping Bear. Oh, I can't wait for this conversation. And with him is Matthew Quirk. Matthew is the New York Times bestselling author of Hour of the Assassin, The Night Agent, The 500, The Directive, Cold Barrel Zero. That's a tough one for me. I was reading that earlier. For whatever reason, Cold Barrel Zero doesn't flow off my tongue very easily. And Manswitch. He spent 5 years at The Atlantic reporting on crime, private military contractors, terrorism prosecutions, and international gangs. He lives here in San Diego, California. So with that, gentlemen, have a great conversation. Can't wait. We'll see you in about 40 minutes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Well, first I wanted to say I had a couple of people reach out to me today to inform me that it's your birthday.
Yeah.
So happy birthday. And can I say which birthday it is?
I turned 30.
30.
So
Wow. And I wanted to say congratulations, because this book is so good. And you got it out in your 20s, which is even more impressive. Wow, big week. So I was just wanted to start maybe if you wanted to tell people sort of briefly about the book, kind of what will draw them in or anything like that.
Yeah, so I got my copy right here. So Sleeping Bear is about a woman in her early 30s who is escaping a trauma, and she goes up to Alaska to start a new life, essentially. and she ends up disappearing. I don't want to give too much away, but so she's my main protagonist, but my other protagonist is her father, who lives in very rural Montana, kind of around where I grew up. He lives on a like cattle ranch, hunting ranch, just he's basically doing whatever he can to survive. And he finds out that his daughter has not showed up for work and she left a week before. And essentially he goes up to Alaska to go looking for her. And what we find out as the story progresses is that the father has a very shadowy past, and his past is coming back for him in a way. So, when I was writing the book, I I don't know if I did this on purpose, but it's kind of a woman goes missing in the woods book, and it turns into a more of like a Vince Flynn political thriller. Um, and I'd never really seen this done before. And writing it kind of terrified me because I've never seen this done before. And, I wrote draft after draft after draft, and it somehow worked, I guess. So,
And I was curious about that because, for me, I had like one book I spent 7 years writing, and
yeah,
it kept changing, and it started as a completely different book. And we were talking a bit earlier, this is your first manuscript, which is even more impressive. And did it start as a pure adventure thriller, and then you thought of maybe tying it into the broader kind of political thriller things, or had that always been the plan?
So, I mean, I can kind of give the spoiler away. My main character is taken to Russia, right? So when I initially had the idea, it was always that Russia was taking her. But as the manuscript progressed, a series and evolution after evolution, I mean, I literally had her getting there 20 ways and 20 backstories and so many different things. And then it wasn't until, the draft that became the selling manuscript, or at least a couple of drafts leading up to it, that I really leaned hard into the more political.
Oh, wow.
And I think it was just because I needed a way to rationalize it to myself and to my audience, because it was almost like if I centered it with some like Washington politics or like geopolitical events or whatever, it seemed just a little bit more plausible.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why I kind of went there, and then I filled in around it.
Yeah, and it's a tough book to discuss because I'm pretty excited about it, and the back of the jacket copy, what we're talking about here, is just scratching the surface of all the twists and reveals and stuff. So yeah, I have trouble with books like that where you want to have people surprised from the very beginning, and then you can't even talk about the book. And it has surprises throughout, and it's great in that way, and it just keeps kind of expanding. And I was really impressed with your research, and I thought I would just kind of start broadly if you wanted to tell us a little bit about the research or your favorite parts of that.
Yeah, so I would say that once I knew at the time I was reading In the First Circle by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, which is about his time in a Sharashka. It's not one of his most well-known books, but he was actually, I can't remember what he was doing, and it's been 5 years since I've read it, but the Soviet state used to take scientists and, people like from all around the Soviet Union and put them in these gulag type places. And their whole livelihood was, you make the Soviet Union as technologically advanced as possible. You try to, create the atomic bomb. You were working on surveillance stuff, whatever it may be. And when I was reading that book, I was like, okay, well, what if we put that type of theme into Sleeping Bear? And because I hadn't seen much done on Sharashkas. You always hear about the gulags, and you always hear about, the prison camps and stuff. So once I started researching that, then I really got into the history of the Soviet Union. Surprisingly, I don't know about your schooling, but I didn't learn much about Russia and the Soviet Union in school. so it wasn't until after I was out of school that I really got into it. And I started reading about the Cold War and I was obsessed with the Cold War. And then, researching this book, I learned that the Cold War never really ended. It just, the Soviet Union collapsed, but essentially the Cold War is still going on today. Putin has reshaped it, but it is still going on today. So I wanted to kind of do my research in that vein and see, okay, like what can I bring new to the table here? Like what can I tell readers that they might not know that might be going on here or that is going on here? So
Yeah, and the Shirashka stuff, like a lot of things in the book, I was like, this is wild. What an imagination on this guy. And then, it turns out to be from real life. So it was kind of a fun blending of those. And as far as some of the more kind of wilderness survival elements of it, was that from Montana? Did you go up to Alaska?
yeah, so a lot of the survival elements, that's just stuff that I've done growing up. In Montana, live in a kind of rural place, you learn to do that as a kid and you do it as a teenager, and I still do it today. But in Alaska, I have been to Alaska a couple of times. I've done a bunch of skiing there, done some outdoor stuff there. But in that area that it was about, I've never been there. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, and I couldn't go there because I didn't have the money to go there at the time that I was writing it. I was a starving, aspiring writer living in Los Angeles at the time, and just out of school. And I had this idea. So, Google became my best friend. And then I started reading everything on the area, like so much that I feel like I know that area like the back of my hand because I spent 5 years there, in my head. So yeah, that's kind of with the whole survival stuff.
Yeah, it was cool. And I mean, there's aspects of Alaska that, you get from going there and then from the research. And I've just done one trip there, but we like backpacked and Denali and stuff, and it was crazy. And just how people kind of sleep anywhere and how wild it is in the roadhouse. I thought you did a great job capturing that. And then, I've been writing about this stuff kind of off and on for years, and I was really impressed with the depth you got into in the military special operations stuff. And then I was reading the acknowledgments, and I thought it was cool you sort of give a shout out to some maybe naval special warfare guys or CIA guys. Is there anything you can tell us about that? And
sure.
How you bring that in?
Yeah, so I'm actually I'm kind of with them right now, and so I, growing up where I grew up, and I wanted to be kind of a spy espionage novelist for a long time. I grew up around a lot of people who were in the naval special warfare community and who were in the CIA, and that's all I really knew. It wasn't until they've retired in the last couple of years and they moved back home that I start to really find out what they have done, what their jobs were, and they've been overseas for the last 25 years. And I was 90% through this book when they came back. So I got them right at the tail end. And, through them, I, expanded that out to meaning, everyone, people in the White House and people who've had these insane jobs at the top of their agencies who are my neighbors, basically, And, in this book, they were able to look at that, kind of look at it at the tail end, and we could do some adjustments and make it more plausible stuff. Because, some of the people in there are based off of real people. But actually the book I'm writing now is very much of their experiences and world they've grown up in.
And is that, so that's not a continuation with these characters?
Nope. I'm starting a new series right now. Cool. So
yeah. And did you find it kind of hard to ask them to share things? Were they like cagey about it at the beginning? Or I guess they had retired, so they were able to loosen?
No, I mean, maybe at first, the person who I've grown up around, he's kind of like an older brother. So that was never a problem. I would say that when he would introduce me to his, friends and colleagues and acquaintances, business partners, they're very, they're fine with talking just because I'm writing fiction. If I was a nonfiction writer, they would never talk to me. But I'm a fiction writer, and it's not like I'm saying like, what did you do? I mean, sometimes they tell me stuff like that, but most of the time it's just, having beers, hanging out, and they're more interested in the publishing world and I'm more interested in their world. So they want to know everything and I want to know everything. And they're always, wanting to help me on scenarios. So I'll give them a scenario and then they'll come back a week later and like, they call it red selling it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's been a couple of times where they've red sold it and I'll go like, that's ridiculous. Like that couldn't even go in a thriller. It's so
over the top.
It's so implausible. And they'd be like, oh no, we did that. And I was like, what? So it's been a really cool experience, just them helping me because they're very enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, cool. We have a question from Facebook or whatever social media is coming in. It's from Kathy Hilowich. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Kathy,
and it was, why did he decide to have a female protagonist?
That wasn't, so I always get asked that, and I always hear other writers or aspiring writers say like, oh, you're so lucky that you picked a female protagonist because it's the in trend thing to do. And that couldn't be further from the truth. It was, Cassie Gale, I grew up around a lot of Cassie Gales, and I just, the character came to me. I just found her interesting in my head. And, when, I spent a lot of time with her on paper and you start to, I mean, how it is, you almost fall in love with your characters, you know everything about them. And so it wasn't really a cognitive decision. It just kind of happened.
So. Yeah. And I was curious too, because, the book's kind of a two-hander in that it, I think we're safe to say the spoiler wise, you start with Kathy and then you go with her, Cassie, I'm sorry. And you go with her father. And, how did you find, was that something you just sort of evolved or had you planned to go back and forth between their perspectives?
Yes. I think if I'm trying to remember, yes, I always knew that I was going to follow both of them, her and her situation, him trying to figure out what happened and then finding her. That never changed. That was pretty much from day one.
Oh, cool. And then Julie from Warwick, who is just the nicest person on earth, she said, yeah, I have a question. And it's the ones you least suspect. She wanted to know about how you researched the torture for the book, because it's very visceral and really grabs you. It's very realistic, I would say.
That's from books I've read and just TV shows, movies, the internet. You can go down a rabbit hole in the internet. I remember in subsequent drafts, I've had like all sorts of different things and torture stuff, but I settled on the stuff I settled on that.
Yeah. So. And it's so weird when somebody comes in and you're like in full research mode and you're like,
oh yeah,
I'm totally fine. Don't worry about me.
I'm always worried about the FBI guy watching what I'm looking at and researching.
Yeah.
They must have they must know, okay, this guy's a thriller writer.
I have friends who I don't think the FBI is actually pulling in this much information, but they'll periodically Google, hello, Mr. FBI man, I'm researching a thriller. Yeah. So, we'll see if that works. And I wanted to touch on part of your background. You were reading scripts in college, and, how did that experience of what I'm assuming was reading like hundreds, if not thousands of scripts play into your story sense and how you approach these?
Oh, I mean, it was huge. And, I think I read, just over 1,000 scripts, if I was going to put a number on it, which is a lot, I mean, I was reading a couple a day, if not 3 a day, 4 a day. Not all because I wanted to, because I had to, but if I look back on that, and I did it on purpose. Like I got those internships and those jobs for a specific purpose. And that was to, learn story just by reading it. With the screenplay, you really have to get down to the bare bones of the story, and you learn pacing, you learn structure, you learn how to be efficient. And as you're doing it, you start to see patterns of what works and what doesn't. Like, why did I get lost on page 20? Why did I make it to page 120 and at the end, and I'm blown away. And that was kind of like my own schooling. Like, yes, I was being taught in school, but in terms of learning like raw storytelling, I would say it was that at that time.
Cool. And were you going with the screenplay storytelling is very structured, and you have to have like sex at 60 and the inciting incident at 15 and all this stuff. And do you still think about those beats, or sometimes to me they're great and sometimes it's a bit of a trap? So I was just curious about how you relate to the sort of classic screenplay structure when you're doing a novel.
Yeah, I think I do. I don't know if I'm doing it so much right now in the second novel, but definitely in Sleeping Bear I was. And I think that was just like, what I was getting out of my environment of reading these all the time. But I still am always thinking of, in terms of a thriller, like, are the stakes pushing my character towards their goal? Like, they're trying to eliminate those stakes. So they're trying to achieve their goal to eliminate those stakes. So I'm always thinking in that realm of like pushing the character forward, pushing the narrative forward, always moving. Don't, you can take a breath, and you should, let your audience take a breath. But, I try to be as efficient as I can be, but that being said, it is really fun in a novel where you can expand a little bit. You can, and that's why I love writing novels as opposed to screenplays, is because you have more of a breath like to work in.
Yeah, and you can just get into this over here and find some cool research, and you can just share that with people. And I wanted to, because this is your debut, do you have your getting published story where you're sort of, for me, I was like an unemployed journalist, and then the next day I had like a book deal and a movie deal, and it was,
I got that story.
Yeah. So how'd it go for you?
Okay, so I was working as a ski instructor at a private ski resort next to where I live, and this is where all the actors and billionaires go. And I was actually,
it's the Yellowstone Club, can I say?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so like before I was a writer, like my dream was to make the Olympics and be a professional skier. I ruined my leg when I was 19. Those Olympic dreams got dashed. So I was, I wasn't good enough in the first place to make it, but I was okay. But secretly I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a storyteller. I wanted to write books and make novels. So I actually got my agents a couple months before this. And it was the agent. So I found out that I got an agent on the chairlift with a very, very, very famous person. And I basically was like, I'm not coming back next year. And it was just, and they were so excited. Like they were just as excited as I was. And it was such a cool moment. And then, a couple months passed, and I'm working with those agents who are amazing. And we did a lot of editing and some structural changes to the manuscript before we took it out. And I think we took it out on March 13th, and the world shut down on March 14th.
Oh, wow.
So that whole like elation of just like, oh my God, like 5 years of work. And I was, I'll never forget this. I was sitting down on my couch, I think like everyone was those first couple of days, drinking a glass of wine at 3:00 in the afternoon, watching Tiger King or whatever. And I remember just staring at the wall and going, oh no, like 5 years of this. And I finally got an agent, like this is going to happen. They sent it out, and then the whole world shut down. And, just like everyone, even my agents were like, they were saying, we don't know what's going to happen. The publishing world could collapse. The whole world could collapse. So,
yeah,
and then I didn't hear anything for a month. And then I got that phone call that just changed my life. And it was just the most amazing, unbelievable feeling. And it was with the editor who was my number one choice, has been my number one choice for years, so it was incredible.
That's really fun. I got to talk to Jack Carr kind of before he was Jack Carr a little bit, like a friend here in San
Oh,
Diego
yeah.
who produced us.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I'm working on this book. And I was like, and I have a lot of meetings like this where I try to be
Yeah.
helpful with people. And then he's like, and the book is out with Emily Bestler. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, you're going to do just fine. And
Yeah.
then, he told me about the book and I got to read it and I was like, you're going to be just fine, Jack. In fact, can I get some blurbs from you like in advance? So yeah, that's a great crew you're with over there.
And Jack's a great guy. Like, I don't even know if he remembers this, but the day I signed, he called me and talked to me for 30 minutes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And that was like a very like, wow. I think he was on Joe Rogan like 2 or 3 days before that. So he blew up and he was just giving me all this great advice. And it was just he's such a nice guy,
Oh, he's so sweet.
so supportive. And that's what's very different that I have found personally in the publishing world with like thriller writers. They're very supportive. That wasn't the case that was around in Hollywood because everyone's so cutthroat there. Everyone's trying to, make it, and it's just a different culture. And then I get here and everyone is always trying to help each other. And I thought that was such a cool, like, cultural thing in this community it's amazing.
Yeah, it's the best. And, from what I understand, like different genres, like sci-fi can be, super like cliquish and like, I don't even know what goes on at the Romance Writers of America meeting, but I think there's drama. Oh, and here's another question from Kathy. And this is something I wanted to ask about too. In the acknowledgements, you mentioned your dad being a writer, and I did some like Google foo, and I think I found him. And Kathy wanted to know, the influence, how much influence your dad had on you being a writer.
Yeah. So, so my dad, he's been a writer for 33 years, and he was actually a investigative reporter at the San Diego Tribune back in the day. Mm-hmm. And he was a very successful investigative reporter. He was nominated for the Pulitzer twice, I think. And he just one day said, I'm in my 30s, like I want to be a novelist, and he dropped everything and he did it. So growing up, and he became, he had his ups and downs, and now he's just absolutely exploded with his last couple books. But I would say that in terms of him influencing me, people always ask me this question, like, what is it like? Does your dad help you? And the simple question is like, not in terms of the craft. No, not at all. He really is good at guiding me through those ups and downs, the work ethic. Like, he has this incredible work ethic that I saw as a little kid all the way until today, and I understood that to be a working writer, you have to have that work ethic. You have to be incredibly self-disciplined. It's going to take years and it's going to take years, and just dealing with that. And that was what helped me so much, is watching him, growing up with him, seeing how he works and seeing how his author friends work. So,
and that was something I was curious about, because I didn't know any novelists growing up, and then I was like always a nights and weekends writer. So when I started doing it full time, I was like nocturnal, and then it took me like 10 years to actually be just to like start at 9, finish at 5, be a sane human being. But you kind of picked that up from seeing how your dad and his peers did it.
Yeah. And I very much do that kind of like daytime writing. I have a little bit different schedule. I think I start a little bit later in the day, but I go, I work a lot of hours. But yeah, I'm definitely not a nocturnal writer unless I really need to be.
Yeah, it took me like 10 years to figure that out. And like, it's a much healthier way to do it. And another sort of like writer world thing, it was funny. When I was looking through the acknowledgements, I I saw Greg Hurwitz in there, which is so funny because like when I put Greg Hurwitz in my acknowledgments, people are like,
Oh,
you
really?
know Greg, everyone knows Greg.
Oh, no,
He's the nicest guy on earth. He helps everybody. So I want to know kind of, and Robert Crace too, who's, I mean, they're both incredible. Just, I was curious about, you know, mentorship and what you learned from people and anything like that.
Yeah, so I mean, I've known Greg since I was like 11 or 12.
Oh, wow.
I've known him forever. He's been friends with my dad forever. So like, I've talked about this on other podcasts and other stuff, but you know, Greg is this like absolute superhuman, and his brain works at a higher level than everyone else's. And he eats an ungodly amount of food to power that brain. I don't know if you've ever eaten with him. It's unbelievable. Or you've had to be in charge of him throughout the day because he eats 18 meals a day. But you know, when I decided to become a writer like 9 years ago, it was, you know, I was talking to Greg about it. You know, I moved to LA to go to school, and he's in LA, and they would always, him and his wife Delina would always have me over for dinner, and they would always be very interested in my schooling and stuff like that. And Greg, you know, when you're around an author like that, they really, it rubs off on you and how, you know, what their work ethic is like. Like Greg's work ethic is insane. It doesn't even compute with me. I don't know how a human being could do that. So, you know, like my goal from the time I started when I was 21, really taking it seriously, was to be published before I was 30. And I made it by 48 hours. So I was pretty excited. Greg was published at like 19 or something. So, and you know, he already had like 7 books published by 30. So it was just very like being around that kind of level of genius in a way. But you know, he'd always give me odd jobs. I'd be like cleaning his office or like arranging his books. And then like, you know, he'd just be messing with me the whole time. And he'd always give me like valuable advice. You know, he would always help me. He'd always show me things. And through him, well, him and Bob Crace are really good friends, and my dad's friends with Bob Crace. So, and Bob's just the most amazing guy. Like he is so supportive. He is just, you know, he's probably one of my favorite writers. And, you know, when you kind of grow up around one of your favorite writers, and it's like your heroes right there. So it was just
so good.
Yeah. And they've helped me a lot and throughout the year. So it's been great.
Yeah. There's a danger in being inspired by Greg, because you think you can write 2 books and 5 screenplays a year. And then you're just like, whoa, this is,
he would do things like, I'd be at his house on a Sunday, and then I'd have to go there on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And he already wrote a whole screenplay in 3 days. And I would just be, and he was like, yeah, it's so easy. Like, it's just this like little screenplay. I would just be like, what? I don't know. It's incredible.
Very cool. Well, I mean, it's awesome to see you with this book and, you know, the start of an awesome career. And here you got the next one rolling. I think, I don't think we have any more Facebook questions. So, and here's Julie.
Here I am. I have a couple questions. And then if anybody has any others, there was one more that came through Facebook, but it's a little bit of a spoiler question. So I wanted to be careful with it. So I wanted to bring it in at the end because it has it could be perceived as a spoiler. So for anybody that's watching right now on either Facebook or on YouTube, turn off now if you don't want any, close your ears if you don't want any spoilers. So this one again is from Kathy. And it's about the end of the book, which the water scene goes pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So was that intentional, or was that just at the very end there? Was that sort of an intentional sort of like that abruptness?
Yeah, that was intentional. You know, it's when you write that third act 100 times, you almost get sick of it. And you want to kind of leave. You want to kind of like put that chop down on it, because, you know, I have the pedal to the metal the whole time, and it's like that adrenaline. And I kind of just wanted to end it because the resolution does happen in the epilogue.
Yeah, so. Great. because that is the thing. Because okay, so as I'm sitting here listening, and I'm like Matthew, it was restraining myself from jumping in. I mean, I did jump in with that comment about Jack Carr because it's like we love Jack Carr; he's the best. Because you said you're not taking these characters to a next book.
Well, so when I finished this book, I was so sick of just everything about it, because it's just, when you're doing the same thing every day for 5 years, I just couldn't even look at it anymore.
Right.
But it's so funny because, I've been away from it for, a year, and I miss, the characters, miss everything. So when I sold it, I told Emily, I'm like, I'm not doing another one. It's a standalone. Here's my other series, blah, 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 blah. I pitched that. She's like, yes. And then now I'm like, now I definitely at one point I do want to go back to it and do a sequel. But, I don't have any plans for when that's going to happen, but it will happen, I think.
Yeah, because it's set up perfectly to keep these characters going. I mean, it is like, I could see lots of different avenues that you could take these guys. Yeah. So your new series then, so your new book is going to be a series?
I hope so.
It's intended to be one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And it'll be more in the vein of like a Jack Carr, Brad Thor thriller.
Okay. Because that is the thing that I think that I had this conversation with another pretty well-known author that we all love and adore too, John Grisham, who it's like, you guys are our next generation of the, David Baldacci's and the Brad Thor and the Vince Flynn. We need that new generation of you guys coming up with books that feed us, because we all are reading too quickly through these things. So yeah. It's great to hear that there'll be more coming. So your next one, do you think that'll be coming 2022 or 23?
We'll see. I think it's scheduled for 2022, but we'll see where I'm on it. It's funny when you say that, oh yeah, I want to start like the new series, and it's like you now have to create that world, and you have a year to do it, and you're like, oh man, like yeah. So it probably would have been smarter for me mentally to just do the sequel, but but I'm very excited about this next thing, and it was about, it's about the people that I live around who've had these crazy lives and their experiences and these secret teams and the CIA and stuff like that I get to hang out with them every other day. So it'll be cool.
Yeah, can't wait. Go back to that work ethic thing, right? Got to like channel Greg Horowitz in there.
Calls me every other day and yells at me to go do that.
Keeping you on task.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we kind of wrap up here a little bit, I know that's the thing that, Matt, it's so hard to talk about these books. I feel like we always do these events like right at release, and nobody's really had the chance. Kathy actually won one of the galleys from the giveaway that we did back in January, so she had a little bit of a but it's so hard because it's like there's so many details that you want to talk about. So it's almost like we want to do this event, and then in 6 months we want to host you again so we can have like a spoiler event. So we can get down into that nitty gritty stuff. But Matt, talk to us about what you're working on next. What do you got going on?
I have a book called Red Warning that I think I'm just finishing the copy ed, or in the middle of the copy editing out. So that'll be out like spring or summer next year. And it's a little bit like my book Night Agent, or Sleeping Bear, in that it's Russian bad guys, and also this notion that the Cold War never ended. And the idea is you have a sleeper and a plot in DC that was sort of laid down before the end of the Cold War, and then this sleeper kind of reactivates it. So it's a lot of fun.
I just don't think that there's ever any ending to our fascination. Oops, my internet might be a little funky with you guys. Can you still hear me okay? Okay. I don't think that's ever, I think that that topic is perennial, because there's a never ending fascination to the Russian Cold War spies, that show, The Americans. I mean, it's, and to think that, I was listening to a podcast, there was a podcast about like the spies that were in, you think of like the spies are these like, you would be able to recognize them, and they're like, no, they're like the guy that's like watering his lawn in his shorts next door could be like the Russian spy, It's so bizarre.
Yeah, they shouldn't be like James Bond or you know, Femme Nikita. They should be like the schlub next door you don't notice.
Yeah, and that's kind of who some of them are though. Like there's one guy in this podcast. It was just like he was not the James Bond guy. So and that's what we all have. But yeah, the I can't pronounce the name of the thing that where the how do you pronounce where they were staying? The Sharashka.
I'm probably saying that wrong, but
yeah, well, I'm too. But I mean, but yeah, just all of those things that. I mean, the lack of human rights and so that we can't wrap our heads around. I think that's why there's just so much fascination to it, you know, because just the things that they did and could still be doing. And I loved that, and I don't think this is a spoiler either, but if it is, we're at the end of it. So I've already given everybody the spoiler things. But that, you know, you mentioned, you name Putin. Putin is like a real character. He is like the character where the president that you picked was just, and I think that's a smart thing to do because it's just like, it doesn't lend itself to any kind of political things, you know, but talking about Putin, it's just like, yeah, he is just like, and he's a nut job.
yeah, I had to scale that back a lot. Like I was going very hard against Putin, and I've had early readers like, you might not want to do that just for your own safety. Okay.
You gotta watch.
Oh, I think I want to read the outtakes. You might have to create like a dark website for us to go to.
Yeah, you definitely
watch out for the UK libel laws.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I imagine, because he's a scary dude. Sorry, he's just.
I have a friend who was libeling somebody in a book, or was worried about a public figure who was very villainous in real life, and he put him in a book, and then he was lightly fictionalized, and he had the lightly fictionalized version meet the real version in the book, so that he could claim that it couldn't have been him. And the lawsuits.
Hilarious.
That's really funny.
I love that.
That's really funny.
All right. Matt, you got a website that you want to direct people to find out more about you and what's going on in your world?
Yeah, MatthewQuirk.com.
Okay, there you go. That's usually where I like to direct people because you can find all of your social media handles there and stuff.
Yeah, and we all keep them totally up to date.
Yeah, no. But at least it's a place to go if people want to send you an email or something. And Connor, how about you? You got a website for people to go to?
Yeah, it's ConnorSullivanAuthor.com.
Perfect. Okay. Well, this was great. I loved this book. Can't wait to keep. Now it's finally out. We get to like scream it from the rooftops.
I know, finally.
And yeah, it's so great. Happy birthday!
Thank you so much.
Wonderful being with you on your birthday. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye to Facebook and to YouTube. So thank you for being here, and can't wait for the next time you're here with another book.
Cool. Thanks, Julie.
All right. Good night.